and welcome back. So we have just finished posting all of our vlogs from our Iceland trip back in October 2019, and the second I started posting Iceland vlogs, I knew that one of the questions that was going to come up quite often would be about how expensive the trip was. Now, when we first thought about going to Iceland and wanted to go to Iceland, we were kind of put off a little bit by it because its reputation of being such an expensive place to visit. And when we looked the very first time, when we looked at going in the August summer holidays, and we priced it up, and it just really seemed like it was going to be too expensive to justify doing. The only way that we actually got to visit Iceland and do our 4-day trip in October 2019 was by a lot of forward planning, basically. So anyway, what I thought I would do in this video is just give you a breakdown basically of everything that we spent in Iceland to give you an idea realistically of how expensive it was. Now, before I get into the full breakdown, just a couple of things that I want to point out. I am not including in this breakdown the cost of the hotels, the cost of flights, the cost of renting the car, insuring the car, or of our excursions. So the 3 excursions that we paid for, we did free diving in Silfra, we did ice caving somewhere along the south coast, and we went to the Blue Lagoon. The reason that I'm not including those costs are simply because flights, hotel, car, that can all vary. That's all down to you really. Our flights were £80 per person. When we looked at some of them in August, they were $435 per person. So it's really down to you how much your trip's going to cost you, down to your forward planning, your budget, how much you actually want to spend, what hotel you want to stay in. So I just thought including it in this breakdown was going to sort of skew the perspective of how expensive it is to actually travel to Iceland. And then the reason I'm not including the excursions is because they're really not necessary. So if you want to do Iceland on a budget, you do not have to pay for any excursions. You can see Silfra and the Golden Circle without having to pay for snorkeling or free diving or scuba diving. You can go and see the glaciers and visit Diamond Beach without having to pay for any glacial hikes or ice caving tours. And if you don't want to pay for the Blue Lagoon, there are other natural hot springs that are either very, very cheap or free to enter elsewhere in the country. I'd also like to point out that the majority of things to see as tourists, the majority of like the famous sites to go to, there's no entrance fee for most of them. It's slightly different inside of Reykjavik, but once you sort of get around and say you want to go to Seljalandsfoss, the big waterfall, which I'm probably not pronouncing correctly, you don't have to pay an entrance fee to go and see that waterfall. However, some of these and quite a few of these attractions actually had parking fees associated with them, so I will include that. So essentially what's going to get included in this breakdown is any food or drink. It's going to include petrol or gas, it will include any parking fees, and then I believe it will also include any entrance fees and souvenirs that we decided to buy, just to give you a general idea of how much everything was while we were over there. So I do have a little Excel spreadsheet right here next to me because I did go through both of our cards and did a whole big daily breakdown. So if I keep looking over here, that's why I'm doing that. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through all the days that we were there. I'm going to list off everything that we bought. I'll tell you each daily total, I'll tell you the full total, and then I'm going to tell you basically what that worked out to as an average per day and per person. So let's get started. So day one we flew from London to Reykjavik. We picked up our rental car, we drove from the airport to Costco, where we stopped, picked up some lint rollers that Euan wanted because the car was a bit, it had glitter and a few things inside, so we just wanted to tidy it up a little bit before driving around in it. The lint rollers were £8.56. And whilst we were there, we also got a Costco lunch, which is a brilliant budget-friendly food option if you are looking at going to Iceland. There is one, I think it's about 20 or 30 minutes outside of Reykjavik. That is the only one in Iceland, so it's not a good option if you're traveling around a lot, but it is a good option if you're in or around Reykjavik for a day or so. That Costco lunch cost us £10.54. I can't remember, maybe we had 1 or 2 slices of pizza. I think maybe Euan had 2 slices of pizza, I had 1 slice of pizza, and we had 2 drinks. I think that's what we got for £10.54. That day we went into Reykjavik, and the one thing that we did pay for in Reykjavik is we went up the cathedral. Highly recommend doing that. 2 tickets to do that was £13.20. And then in the evening we went to our Viking restaurant and had a Viking dinner. We had a main, a dessert each, I think a soft drink each, and I believe Euan had a cider. I was driving, so I did not drink at all this holiday. All of that came to £71.60. And this is something that we noticed in Iceland. The sit-down restaurant meals, that's where the prices really sort of increase. That's where your money is really, really gonna go. And we kind of expected that a bit, so we did bring a lot of food with us. We brought hot chocolate, we brought, what are they called? Like cup noodles, and we also brought lots and lots of snacks. So luckily we didn't have to spend much money on food snacks, but we did still spend quite a bit, I think, on drinks and sit-down meals. So, day one, we spent £103.56. So day 2, we started the day in Reykjavik. We just took a little walk into the city and just had a little bit of sightseeing. We bought 2 bottles of Coke, that was £3.82. We also started buying our souvenirs here. So we bought 1 mug for £9.82, which again, I don't find that too bad because I've bought mugs in a lot of cities around the world. This wasn't a Starbucks mug. I don't believe Iceland has Starbucks. So it was just from a tourist gift shop. So £10 I think is a pretty reasonable price. We also bought a Christmas ornament. Now again, that's something that we opt in to do. It's an extra expense that we choose to pay because whenever we go away together, we always buy a Christmas ornament to hang on the tree. This ornament cost us £19.11. But if I remember correctly, it's like etched glass or something. So there were cheaper options, but we wanted a really nice one, so we paid a little bit more for that nicer one. We also then bought 2 bottles of water. I know you're never supposed to buy water in Iceland, but we picked up 2 bottles. One so that we had a bottle that we could actually refill throughout the trip because we didn't bring any reusable water bottles with us. And then also because we were going to start doing quite a bit of driving from that day on, so I wanted to make sure that we at least had a bottle of water each to start that with. And then lunch, we didn't vlog this at all. We picked up lunch from like a convenience store. It was a bit like a 7-Eleven. I believe Euan got a couple of slices of pizza and I got this sort of like pizza roll-up thing. I remember it being really good. I just can't remember like how much we bought of it, and I think we might have had individual drinks with us as well, like soda fountain beverages. We bought those as well. So that came to £19.24. From there, we drove to the national park because this was the day that we did the silver free diving. Parking at the national park was £4.94. And then in the evening, we drove back to Reykjavik. We got 2 takeaway burgers and chips and a drink. And those 2 meals came to £29.53. So as you can see, the fast food and the convenience store options are so much cheaper than the table service restaurants, although still slightly pricey. So day 2's total was £97.61. So day 3 was the start of our South Coast road trip. We started the day at the Blue Lagoon. I haven't included the cost of that in this breakdown. I believe it was somewhere around like £65 per person, so quite pricey, but like I said, not included in this. From there, we drove to a little town called Selfoss, where we stopped at a petrol station, we filled up our tank, and we also got 2 burger meals from that petrol station because we'd heard that that was a good way of getting affordable but good quality food. So to fill up our tank, we spent £32.80. And the 2 burger lunches were £20.04. And again, that was a burger, chips, mine had a Bounty bar, and it was a drink each. So already from leaving Reykjavik and getting those takeaway burger meals to getting them in this petrol station in Selfoss, you can see that there's about a £10 difference, a little drop in price there. It's also worth pointing out, if I haven't mentioned, I'm so sorry, the car that we hired was an automatic. From the petrol station, we drove to a waterfall. That was free entry for the waterfall, but the parking came to £4.61. Then we continued on the rest of our South Coast road trip, and I believe, I really want to say that the drive was something like 6 hours altogether. Like 6 or 7 hours on and off. So we did have to top up the petrol again. If you watch the vlog, you will see that we topped up the petrol and then we tried to get a drink from somewhere and we ended up going into this place that was closed. So the petrol was £29.96. And then the place that was closed that let Euan in and let him buy a couple of bottles of Coke and gave him a free coffee, those 2 Cokes came to £3.87. So the price of things like Cokes, they don't change when you're in Reykjavik versus the rest of the country. That is basically the exact same price. There was a 5p difference, which I'm guessing is going to be down to exchange rate, because we use a currency card that always uses the on-the-day exchange rate. And then we didn't buy dinner on that day. I think, if you watch the vlog, I talk about it all there, but I think we get to our hotel room stupidly late. We don't buy dinner, we just relied on the food that we'd brought with us, the noodles and the snacks and everything that we had with us. So that's how we ate most of the time for that day. That's also how we had breakfast every day actually. So I haven't included any breakfasts in these breakdowns because we just bought some, I feel like I bought some like little croissants or something with me, and then some breakfast bars, and then we had other snacks like crisps and chocolate bars and stuff with us. So that's how we did breakfast. So day 3 came to a total of £91.28. So day 4, we started on this side of the country and basically drove all the way back to Reykjavik, on the way making a few stops. So before we left the hotel, we actually bought 2 bottles of Coke and another bottle of water because Euan chucked away his empty water bottle from the start of the trip. So we had to get another one so we could start filling that up. Those 3 drinks came to £7.87, so a tiny bit more expensive to be buying from a hotel versus a convenience store or a grocery store. Once we left the hotel, we drove to Diamond Beach, which has the black sand and those real big sort of, are they icebergs? I don't really know, but like the big lumps of ice that have obviously come down from the glacier. That's where we did our glacier hike and our ice caving. So while we were there, we bought 2 fish and chip meals, and I believe they came with a can of drink each. Those 2 meals came to £28.21. And another thing that we didn't actually include in the vlog is we decided to try one of their hot dogs. So we bought a hot dog after the ice caving and 2 bottles or cans of Pepsis, I can't remember which, to split. And that came to £8.18, so for a hot dog and 2 drinks. From there, we ended up driving all the way back to Reykjavik, and we stopped around Vik, where we went to another black sand beach where they filmed Game of Thrones. That's where we had dinner. It was in this sort of like gastropub, like a pub restaurant. Really, really good food, very reminiscent of our first night on the trip. And that came to so much, £75.29. And if I remember correctly, we both had a main, we both had desserts, we both had a drink, and then I believe Euan had an alcoholic beverage on top as well. And then before finishing our drive back to Reykjavik, we had to get petrol, which came to £42. When we rented our car, we did full to full on our petrol, so we had to return the car with a full tank. So that £42 basically filled the tank up for the most part with a tiny top up the next day. So day 4's total came to £161.55. So day 5 we did not do anything. Day 5 was our travel home day. So we drove to the airport. All we did was make sure that our tank was completely full before dropping it back off, and then bought 2 Cokes, 2 bottles of Coke at the airport. So the petrol top up cost us £13.08, and the 2 Cokes at the airport cost us £3.53. So day 5 came to a total of £16.61. So I know that some of these figures sound really high. 2 of the dinners though, I count them as really nice like going out dinners, and I wouldn't be surprised if I spent £50 or £60 doing a dinner like that even in the UK. So I'm pretty chuffed altogether. But to give you a full breakdown of how much everything cost, the full total that we spent on food, drinks, snacks, like proper meals, petrol, souvenirs, entry fees and parking was £470.61. And to give you a couple of averages on that, that means it was £117.66 a day. So individually came to £58.83 per day. And you know what? I'm not mad about that. We went into this expecting it to be an expensive trip. I think we had a budget of about £500 to £600, so we were completely within budget with that spending. We ended up maxing out our budget using those excursions, but that's kind of what we were planning for and what we were prepared for. I don't think £60 per day is too bad for the kind of trip where you're going and you're going into it with a mentality of knowing you'll probably spend quite a bit, knowing that you're in an expensive place, and knowing that you're trying to get as much out of it as you can. So overall, I actually didn't find Iceland, I found it expensive, but I didn't find it too expensive. I felt like justified in spending the money that I spent. So anyway, that is how expensive it was for us to visit Iceland. That is how much it cost us for a 4-day city getaway to Reykjavik and then our South Coast road trip. Hopefully you guys found it interesting. Let me know down below if you think that that's really expensive or if it's less than you were expecting. Honestly, I've been to quite a few countries that are pricey, things like Norway and Switzerland, so I feel like maybe my perspective of it is a little bit skewed. Could have been better, could have been worse is sort of the approach I have at the moment. I'm not angry with how much I spent. Would have loved it if it was cheaper, but I'm okay with the amount that we spent. So thank you all very much for joining me on today's video, and hopefully we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.